there's distracting outside noise, I'm sorry, but distracting outside noise I think is less obnoxious audio than the AC running, so we're going with that. Also, finger guns are my new thing. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. You guys know the drill. It's July. Yay, I guess. I don't know. Are we happy it's July? Actually, I am happy it's July. I've got a good feeling about July. It's gonna be a good month. I'm feeling positive. Maybe I'm just bullshitting myself because I want it to be a positive month, but whatever it takes. However, as you know, that means we now need to do my June wrap-up, which I have no idea how this is gonna go. I feel like I read nothing, and yet I read 17 or 18 books, I think. I don't know how I feel about the books that I read. I don't know how I feel about the month of June at all. So let's just get started and see how it goes. One quick note before we get into things, I have a busy weekend in terms of live shows. So if you're watching this relatively soon after it comes out, tomorrow, June 9th, I will be on Margaret Pinard's channel talking about The Food of a Younger Land by Margaret Kurlansky. I can't remember off the top of my head what time it's going to be, but the link and the information will be in the description down below. And on Saturday, I will be on Kim's channel, Bookmarks and Breadsticks, with Amrita and Amy of Potato Brarian, and we have some very exciting news coming your way, so make sure you check out that live show. I'm so stoked about it. I'm just so excited for what we have to share with you guys. I think it's going to be really fun. Make sure you join us for those, and I guess let's get into the books. The first book I finished in June was Men at Arms by Terry Pratchett. I read like 99% of this in May. So at the end of May, I was reading a couple of like really heavy books, and I needed something just like light and fun to intersperse them with so that it wasn't just heavy depressing books 24/7. So I picked up Men at Arms. I've lost track of what number in the Discworld series, and it's a really good one. This is the second book in the City Watch or Night Watch series or sub-series, and in this one the Watch has been forced to hire some diversity hires. So instead of just men, literally humans who are male, they now have to hire a dwarf, a troll, and a woman. Of course, discussion ensues, plot developments ensue, there's loads going on in this book that I'm not going to try and summarize because frankly it's been over a month since I finished it now and I didn't take that good notes. What I do want to mention is I love how Pratchett handles prejudice in this. Understandably, I think it's easy to fall into the trap of good guys are always accepting and always open to new people and always tolerant, bad guys are always bigots, and that's just how it is. But I don't think that's a very helpful way to represent the world in books always. It has its place, it's a totally valid approach, but I really like that all of our original good guys in this, all of the members of the Night Watch who we already know and love as characters, are prejudiced at the beginning of this in various ways. Captain Vimes is super speciesist. He's super like, this is ridiculous, we can't possibly have a dwarf and a troll in the Watch. I can't believe I'm being forced to do this. Carrot, the like epitome of cinnamon roll perfect characters, is super prejudiced against the undead, which I'm not going to tell you how that comes into this book, but it does. And the reason why I think this is super important is not because I think it's good to show characters being bigoted. Obviously, I'm not in favor of having faves who are just blatantly bigoted all the time, but it lets Pratchett show growth, and it lets the reader consider growth. It's not that if you have racist thoughts, you're flat out an evil person with no potential. You can acknowledge that you are wrong, you can change, you can become a better person. And I think that's an important story to tell. Also, because I was watching Katie Reads and Rants June wrap-up this afternoon before I filmed this, I don't think I talk enough about how funny these books are. It's not something that generally I think to bring up in a review. I usually talk more about the plot or the themes or something, or frankly, in the case of Discworld books, just not talk about them at all. These are deeply, hilariously humorous novels. So many levels, so many references. I swear every single time I read one, I discover new things in them that are so funny. So if that's not something you were aware of, but it makes it attractive to you, yet another reason for you to read Discworld. Then we get into my reads for the Queer Lit Readathon. I have an entire vlog about that, which I will link up here, and I talk extensively about most of these books in that vlog, so make sure you check that out, but I will run through them now as well. The first book I finished for that was Last Night in Nuuk by Niviaq Kornelissun. This is the story of 5 young people coming of age in Greenland's capital, and I say this every time I mention this book, but 20-something young people, not like 16-year-old something's young people. I know that's an issue that, like, if I thought it was about 16-year-olds, I probably wouldn't have read it, and it's definitely worth reading, so if that's going to affect you, I want to mention it. It's definitely a very different book, and I'm not going to say it's the same or it's anything like that, but if you really enjoyed Girl, Woman, Other, I suspect that you will like this one, because there's a lot of similar elements, the way the stories cross over, the way we see things from different perspectives. It really reminded me of that in a fantastic way. That being said, do not pick up this book if you are looking for queer joy. This is a messy book about people who are in challenging places in their lives, who aren't necessarily making good decisions or doing things the way they would like to. A lot of them don't really get a happy ending or anything like that. It's very much just a look in on these people as they're figuring out how to be adults and how to interact with other people. It's great, it's fantastic. I can see why it's kind of a love it or hate it type book. If you've read it, let me know how you felt about it. If you haven't read it, give it a go, but I don't know. I don't know how to explain why it's love it or hate it, but I totally see how it is. Then I read Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a very, very short book about a young girl in the 1970s in Brooklyn and sort of what her life is like. I didn't love this book as much as I wanted to. I felt like it just didn't have quite enough and I wanted more from it, but the writing is phenomenal and the narration on the audiobook is so perfect. It was one of those books where hearing the narrator just made it feel like I was actually listening to the narrator in the book. The voice matched perfectly. If that's something you enjoyed, this is, it's like a 3-hour-long audiobook, definitely worth checking out. Then I read The Wrong End of the Telescope by Rabih Allamedinne. This is about Mina, a doctor who travels to a Greek island at the sort of beginning of the refugee crisis in I think around 2015. While she's there, she meets a woman who's dying of cancer and it's palliative care at this point. She's not acting as a doctor trying to treat this woman. Well, how I'll put it. I thought this book was going to be a lot more about this woman working as a doctor on this island, like focused on the medical work and the patients she was treating. And certainly that side comes up, but it is, I would say, a lot more about her and her experiences there and her history herself, and this weird development of a character that we only really start to meet towards the end of the book. And I don't know how to describe it. A lot of the book is addressed to you and it's not at all explained who you is, and you can sort of start piecing it together as things go on. It's really interesting. It was really good. It comes out in September and I highly recommend checking it out. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, this is like one of the most important parts. The way the various characters who are refugees are developed is fantastic. From what I understand, Allamedinne actually spent a lot of time interviewing Syrian refugees in, I think mostly in Lebanon and then also in the Greek islands and that sort of stuff. And while I don't think he, one for one copied any people, the scope and the detail and the way these characters are built is phenomenal, and it's worth reading for that alone. Then I read Maurice by E M Forster. This is a classic in LGBTQIA+ literature, as one of the earliest novels to be written in which the gay main character doesn't just kill themselves. So it's written in the 1913-1914, published in 1970. Editing Rosie popping in. I just wanted to clarify because I don't think I properly explained or went into enough detail here. I'm not an expert on this, obviously, but from what I understand, when it was written in the 19-teens in English literature, and I'm referring to, I guess I should say British literature at the time, it was really revolutionary. You could write sometimes gay characters and get them published, but basically they had to have sort of a punishment or like come to a bad end in order to be deemed acceptable for release. So having this story where that's not the case was quite revolutionary. I don't know if it was still revolutionary in the 1970s. Again, not an expert at all. And also, I don't know how much this is the case for British literature
for writing in English and internationally. I don't know what was being done in other languages or in other countries. This was maybe not at all revolutionary in some places, but within its setting, it was. And I don't want to make it seem like more or less than it is, if that makes sense. Okay, I hope that has clarified and not just made things more confusing.
And it is the story of Maurice, a very, very conventional young British man who happens to be gay, and sort of what happens in his life. I can appreciate why this book is important. I'm glad that I have read it and I know the story and I know the context behind it. It's not a book that I particularly enjoyed. Then, very exciting, I read Death in Daylesford by Kerry Greenwood. The 21st Phryne Fisher novel came out this month and I was so freaking excited. In this one, Phryne and her companion Dot travel to a spa town in the countryside where, of course, murders start happening in very strange ways. Meanwhile, in the city, Hugh, Dot's policeman fiance, and Phryne's 3 wards, the children that she has guardianship over, are solving a mystery of their own. I really can't tell if Greenwood's writing has declined a bit in the later Phryne novels, or if because I was reading this one through totally fresh eyes, I was noticing the flaws more. I seem to recall that number 20 was my least favorite of all the ones I'd read so far, so I kind of think it might be that her writing is declining a bit, but maybe I do just have a stronger emotional attachment to the earlier books. I'm not sure. This was still a really good book. I really enjoyed reading it, but I can totally see how if you don't already love these characters and if you don't already love this world, I'm gonna call it, you wouldn't like this book necessarily, and I don't think you would think it was a super well written book. I thought that a lot of the characters felt, I think this is a commonly used term, flanderized. In the early books, they started out as complex, nuanced characters with a lot going on, and they had like certain traits, but they weren't one note. And as the series has gone on, I feel like the characters have gotten more and more concentrated in their single traitness, if that makes sense. And when it comes to the characters who just show up in this book, you know, I never know what to call those in like series, the ones who show up for this mystery, who are involved in this case, but we probably won't see again. Those characters especially felt way, way concentrated down to their one core message. And on the point of messages, I feel like Greenwood was just trying to do too much with this book. I really appreciate that a lot of her books have a sort of social commentary aspect about the treatment of women in society, or the treatment of a certain race in society, or anything like that. They often do have a bit of a point to them, and I'm a fan of that. I like that about the early books. But in this one, it felt like she had so many different things that she was trying to put in. Instead of working one element through the story, it felt like every character we met had to have a little 3-sentence thing that they deliver about their thing. The characters didn't feel as fully fleshed out and interesting as I feel like they do in the earlier books. It just started to feel a bit forced. If it had been pared back to 1 or 2 issues, it could have been done much more elegantly and much more impactfully. All of that is to say, this book was disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. I was really, really excited. I still really enjoyed it. I still really liked it, but it wasn't as good, unfortunately. Also, I don't know if anyone else has read these books all the way through and obsessed over them as much as I had. In my head, Phryne is always in her mid to late 30s. I guess I knew logically based on timing in her past that she had to be about 29, but we're reminded in this book that she's only 29, and we get this weird thing about her being afraid to turn 30, and it just felt very strange and out of character because in my head she's already like 35 or 39 or something, and I'm keeping that headcanon. I like this character a lot more if she's not super young. Not that 29 is super young. I don't know. I guess I just feel like as someone who's not approaching 30 this year or anything, but getting into that range of coming up towards 30, it doesn't feel that old, and it felt out of place to have Phryne, this incredibly confident and like self-possessed character, suddenly be stressing that men wouldn't be attracted to her because she was 30. And I'm like, girl, that's not gonna be a problem. That's not you. Then I read the first 4 volumes of Lumberjanes. All of that stuff will be linked down below because there's way too much information for me to try and remember for long enough to speak it to you. And these were really cute. I really, really enjoyed these. They're kind of hard to review, and they were also kind of hard to get into, I won't lie, because it's graphic graphic novel, comics, whatever you want to call it, and we see the characters and they're using names between each other, but I didn't have a strong sense at first of which name is attached to which characters, even though I'd already read 2 of them. But once I got over that, once I got a bit more into it, I found them just delightful. I wasn't sure about the plot and the pacing. Maybe this is because I read them literally all 4 in one go, as opposed to as single bind-up comics over the span of, I guess, like 16 months or something? How often do comics come out? I don't know. It felt weirdly paced. We'd have one chapter or one issue that felt just like a cute, fun filler, which, don't get me wrong, I love a cute filler issue. And then we'd have, over the span of 1 or 2 issues, an entire plot. And I'd sort of feel like that plot should have stretched over 4 or 8 issues, not been so crammed in. But again, maybe that's because of how I read it. I don't know. I don't read a ton of comics, so I don't necessarily want to criticize the books for that, but I thought it didn't quite work for me. I think I do want to keep reading this series. I think there's something like 12 or 13 more volumes I can collect. I should really renew my library card is what I should really do, and see if I can get these from my library, because I prefer physical copies for anything graphic. I don't know. I'm bad at libraries because I don't know when I want to read something. I kind of want to just have the books on my shelf, and when I want to sit down and read another 4, be able to pull them out, but I think that's something I need to get over, because I also don't want to spend necessarily the money to buy another 13, and I've already asked for something else for my birthday, even though it's like 5 months away, so not sure. I should probably get a library card is the answer. Sticking with short books, I then read Avidly Reads Guilty Pleasures by Arielle Zibrak. This is really more of an extended essay, I think, about guilty pleasures, guilty pleasure media, guilty pleasure consumption, but really it's about femininity and being a woman, and I don't even know how to describe this book, but wow, did I feel seen. This was quite possibly the most like, wow, are you just looking at the inside of my head with an x-ray, because you are describing things in such detail that I wouldn't even have been able to describe them myself, but that is exactly how I feel. And it also really makes me want to learn to be more critical of the things I love without coming to hate them, and I don't know how exactly I do that, but it's definitely something I want to practice. This one is one that I read for a buddy read with Katie and Amrita, and we did a live show on Amrita's channel, which will be either linked up here or down below. I don't know. Wherever I can link things, I will. We had a great discussion about this, so if it sounds even remotely interesting, make sure you check that out. The next 3 books I read for another reading vlog, and this time it was books that I had picked up because Lauren Wade recommended them on her channel, so my video will be linked up here. Again, and even more so than the last one, I went pretty into detail about these 3 books when I talked about them in the vlog, so I'm just going to run over it really quickly here in the interest of time. The first book I read was Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. This is a novella, I think we would call it. It's like 130 pages, and it's about a young girl, 17, young woman, teenage girl in the early 90s, I think, who's spending part of her summer on an archaeology dig experiment type thing. They're like recreating Iron Age techniques because her dad, who's incredibly abusive, is obsessed with the Iron Age. I don't even know how to describe this book here because it packs so much into such a small book, and it is so phenomenal. I totally get why everyone seems to love it so much, and I'm so excited to read more Sarah Moss. Then I read Trainwreck by Sady Doyle. This is all about our societal obsession with women who are behaving badly or women who are out of control, and why we need to obsess with them, what they say about us as a society, and what the various aspects that we fixate on tell us about the semi-unspoken limits that we still put on women. Again, this was a fantastic book, another great recommendation, and I talked about it a lot more in detail in the vlog. And finally, for that vlog, I read Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. Yes, a second Woodson in the month, and I have to say it has me so convinced that I want to do more of like reading multiple books by the same author pretty close together, because it was so fascinating to see how she did things differently, and in my opinion, way better in Red at the Bone. Another Brooklyn was a solid 4-star read. And Red at the Bone was a 5-star, blew me away. I loved this book. And I should tell you what it's actually about. So Red at the Bone is a multi-generational family saga type story that centers around a 16th birthday party in the year 2000, and we're seeing what's going on with these various family members at the time of the party, and then also seeing them reflecting and thinking about things that had happened in the past. And I think we basically jump back to the past at certain points. I'm doing a terrible job of describing this, but it was a phenomenal book. I absolutely loved it. The development of character here was so beautiful and so perfectly done, and the characters that Woodson chose to build and to think about and to focus on were so interesting to me. There were so many things that I just looked at and went, yes, that's interesting. I just really loved this book. Then I finished Soul Music by Terry Pratchett. Yes, another Discworld reread. Look, after the Queer Lit Readathon, I honestly hit a bit of a slump, and I'm still in a bit of a slump, to be perfectly honest. Wow, how honest can I be here? I just needed something easy. I was really hoping that I would tear through this in the span of like 2 days and then I'd get my reading mojo back, and that didn't quite work, and it took me like 2 weeks to read, which isn't a bad thing. It was just that I just wasn't in the mood to read at all, and feel kind of guilty about not reading a bunch of the books that were on my TBR, but that's a dumb thing to guilt myself over. And anyways, Soul Music. This is the 3rd? 4th? I've lost track of what number this is in the Death series, but in this case, once again, Death is having issues, and all of a sudden his granddaughter starts coming into some interesting new powers that she did not expect to have. At the same time, Music with Rocks In has arrived on the disc, and it is having some very strange effects. Again, I love Discworld novels, and because I was basically in a reading slump and just doing this to do anything to keep me reading 5 pages a day, I didn't really take any notes about this or have any more thoughtful considerations, but it is another phenomenal Discworld book, and I won't stop recommending them. The last book I read, like on an ebook or physical or whatever you want to call it, in June, and technically I finished it in July, but whatever, we're ignoring that, was Food of a Younger Land by Mark Kurlansky. This was a buddy read with Margaret Pinard, and it was fantastic. It is, I don't know how to describe this. Kurlansky has collected a bunch of things, some of them are essays, some of them are just very short entries, that were being prepared at the end of the Great Depression as part of the Works program. They were going to write like a history of American food, and they'd employed writers all over the country. These writers have been working on other projects that actually did get published, and then they were working on this one about American food and regional food in the US when World War II broke out, and then all of a sudden we didn't need a works project because people were just really busy because there was a lot more demand for things. Anyways, this is not the point. The point is that he's collected all these essays that were never finalized. They're basically all just packed up in a box and put somewhere. And he's pulled them out and collected them and added commentary and introductions and stuff. So this was fascinating. I don't know if it would be universally interesting, but I thought it was so cool. If it sounds cool, like I said at the beginning, I will be on Margaret's channel this Friday, so tomorrow when you are seeing this, and we're going to do a live show and have a discussion about it, and I'm sure that will be fascinating because I have a lot of thoughts, but they are a mess, so let's move on. Alright, technically 2 last books to talk about. I listened to the audiobooks of The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. Yes, I am acutely aware that that means I've now reread those books twice in the year since I started my channel. I have no excuses. Basically, when I was in a physical book reading slump, I was also in an audiobook reading slump. I was really not... I was enjoying but not wanting to read the audiobook that I was listening to, which I'll talk about probably in July because I'm hoping to finish it. And I just wanted something comforting. And for me, comforting, ultimately, my brain goes to Lord of the Rings. I decided to pick up the audiobook. And since I've talked a lot about Tolkien on this channel, and I'm sure I will continue to do so in the future, I want to talk specifically about the editions of the audiobooks that I was listening to, because these books are so popular and successful. There's a lot of different versions you can listen to, and I've listened to a different version in the past, thought they were really good, really enjoyed them. But this time, I listened to the Phil Dragish versions, and these are phenomenal. So they're free, they're available online, I think. I listened to them on Spotify. I don't know if that's everywhere. Is Spotify regional? I don't know. If I can link it down below, I will, because they're fantastic. Basically, Dragish, he reads the books, he does amazing voices for the characters and stuff. It's super great, but also he uses sound effects and music from the movies to make it like augmented. And you would think that hearing horses' hooves when they're being chased by black riders or swelling of music at key points would be really distracting, but actually it was transformative. It was phenomenal. Even though I wasn't just sitting and listening, I was mostly listening to these books while I was walking or doing chores or just around the house. I feel like I appreciated the prose in ways that I don't usually do because of the added stuff. Like, instead of distracting and being weird, annoying background noise, it just made the actual words of the texts all that more impactful, and it was just phenomenal, and I loved them. And it's only the fact that I have another book that I need to listen to in the first like week and a half of July for a video that has me not listening to Return of the King right now, because I am so excited to get to that one. Okay, those are the books I read in June. I don't know if it was a good reading month. Numbers wise, yeah, it probably is. I don't feel super happy with my reading, even though I liked a lot of the books. It's confusing, it's weird. Let's not talk about it anymore because I'm just gonna get more confused. Let me know down below, what did you read this month? I would love to hear about it, and I hope you had a better reading month than I did. If you like this video, please give it a like down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.